6 minutes past 8. I'm delighted to say James Tracy is back with us to talk to us about we'll start with the URC, right? What's the rivalry like in the dressing room, the week of the game, the day of the game, in the middle of the game, and at halftime of the game? What is the like bones of this rivalry against Munster? Is it as intense as it was when you started? Is it always going to be intense anyway because you're up against people for an Ireland jersey? What's it actually like?
From speaking from a personal point of view, I always had that hatred there, you know, and like, as you said, you're fighting for a jersey, so I would have been like, I'm sure I'm not on the Christmas card list in the Scannell household, and neither was he in mine, you know, but that's good. It was good having that rivalry of, you know, that the hatred inside you, but also the years gone past of like it's not an easy place to go to Thomond. And you know, like it's a cauldron, and it's one of the best places to play for the wrong reasons in terms of it's so hostile, it's so intense. But that's why you play rugby, and it's just playing those moments. But to answer your question, in my opinion, the rivalry couldn't be more still there. You know, whether the results recently, you know, we've been quite dominant, but if you ask them, I guarantee you they hate our guts. A lot of them anyway, and I would have had that same feeling playing any of the provinces. There was a lot of hate there from a personal point of view, but maybe I'm just a bit twisted.
Was that word hatred across the dressing room? Was that the case? Could you feel the dressing room was different when you're playing Munster?
Well, you've different characters, you know. A lot of, like
James Lowe's a lover, not a fighter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everyone just hates him. Unless he's on your team, which is when you love him because he's scoring 1 or 2 tries a game. But yeah, no, listen, I can't speak for everyone, but like certainly not being too traditional, but like, you know, forwards would tend to get a bit more G'd up for a lot of things. You know, where it's more combative, you're in the trenches, it's a lot easier to build that hatred inside you than some, I don't know, like Johnny, I'm fairly sure, has gotten fairly fired up over the years. But I can only speak for myself in saying that I definitely had that fire in me anytime I was playing a province of like genuine dislike. And, you know, over time that goes away. But like when you're in there, you have yourself feeling that.
Does this start at underage, or does it only pretty properly manifest itself when you make the senior team and you're getting picked and you're like, oh, hang on a second, everybody here is just a little bit more on edge this week than they are when we're playing Zebra or Dragons or whoever?
I'd say it starts in school, to be honest. You know, like, I remember playing a few of the Munster schools and you're going down and they're kind of like have this chip in their shoulder about like these soft lads coming down from Leinster, and like, you know, they're giving you a little bit extra in the rucks and everything like that. And like, listen, I all for it. I loved that part of the game, but like that's definitely for me anyway where it started. And you know, some people mightn't feel like that exists, but I definitely felt it and I loved it. You know what I mean? I loved the abrasive side of it. But that's when it started for me. It was, and then you go into interprovincials at underage, and that's the, you know, that's the biggest stage you can play on at that age. So it kind of starts from there, in my opinion, and kind of builds throughout.
Was the level of smack talk, I guess, in the middle of games taken to another level in those matches in the scrums? And
do you know what? COVID was the only time when the smack talk was at its highest, because you had to create atmosphere, right?
And very dangerous because everybody can hear you.
Well, like they had the dummy crowd noise to probably drown out a little bit. Okay. But I remember that was one part of. Well, obviously you missed having the atmosphere of the game there. There was one part of it I didn't like, was like all the amount of chirping and going on. But like you had to try create energy somehow.
Yeah.
And I was just as bad, if not the worst, at talking crap like in the middle of games. But definitely looking back, I didn't like that side of it. Versus, you don't mind a few, like there's always going to be a bit of chirp here and there, but it was kind of like very almost American, you know, the amount of stuff that's been talked during COVID. But as I said, you had to create the atmosphere from somewhere because it was just dead stadium.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I was very concerned at the time when Joey Carberry was moved from Leinster to Munster, or / moved. It felt a little bit like this is a dangerous precedent to start taking good young players from one province and transplanting them to another, because it's going to be very difficult for them to feel exactly the same that you felt coming through the Leinster system. what was your instinct around the time of that happening? Was there a danger of that? Because it turns out there hasn't been. But I think maybe Munster got better at bringing players through their system as well. So I think maybe I overreacted at the time. But what was when you were in the middle of that and this is happening? You're like, they're taking one of our really good players and they're making our main rival stronger. What's going on here?
Well, you're obviously not happy about it. Especially like losing, Joe. He's a great fella as well. Like he would have been a good part of the changing room. Never mind being a class player. So you're not delighted about that part. First of all, just losing him in general. But anyway, people make their decisions, and you're with the enemy then until you meet outside of rugby. And then you're pals. But I can only speak from let's say like John McKee coming into Leinster, and like he's part of the furniture now, So it taking people in, I don't think it's probably as big a deal as it's made on the outside, but when you're losing someone to one of your rivals, especially someone who's very good, definitely you're not delighted about it, but again, it's out of your control.
I guess Leinster did benefit from like Robbie Henshaw, for example. So maybe it swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like there you go. Like that one, I'm sure a lot of the Connacht faithful are still a bit salty about that one, and rightly so. He's one of the best centres of all time. But people got to make decisions for themselves at the end of the day, and 100% respect Joey and his decision, like Robbie and his decision. At the end of the day, it's doing what's right for you.
Okay, let's talk about the Sharks game last weekend and what Leinster will have learned from that. You've looked through it. What was your takeaways?
I think so. The Sharks, like crazy athletes, and I think the South African teams have brought so much to the URC in terms of just that X factor and dealing with these crazy big men, and also like that Williams try at the beginning was just like exceptional. You just have guys they've like an extra gear of speed that I don't know we don't seem to have up here. But anyway, it's brilliant for us to be able to play against. But one of my takeaways is probably the difference between the good teams and the great teams is the attention to detail on like how they're running lines and all that side of things. So the great Felipe Contepomi taught me about the triangles probably later in my career than I would like to have known, because I've gotten in trouble from a lot of out halves about not knowing what line to run. But essentially that if the ball carrier is running straight, that the next guy should be running a tight line, and if the ball carrier is running an overs line, so whether it be away from the ruck, that the next guy should be running a straight line. That sounds very simple, but a lot of the bad teams will have, not bad teams, when you don't run shape well, it's you might have someone running straight, you might have someone running in, but they might be ahead of the ball, or they might be too deep, and they're never an option, or they don't look like they're ever going to be an option. While the good teams have, or they might be both running straight, or they might be both running overs. But the good teams or the great teams, it's the timing of everyone is actually an option, instead of just having that maybe have the person run straight, the person coming short, but they're never really an option. It's quite obvious to tell, and like a dummy runner, they're actually dummy runners, because one, they don't have the conviction, and two, they're probably not running the right line at the right time. I think what makes like the top tier European teams is the ability, the understanding of that first of all, and the ability to do that time and time again. Because when you're defending, all of a sudden, if I see someone running a dummy line and I know they're not going to get it, I don't have to respect him, and then the guys outside me and outside, all of a sudden we're wider and we're able to press because we're not getting sucked in. Well, if I have to respect the short guy because he might actually get it, then all of a sudden everyone outside has to come in a tiny bit. And I just thought Leinster, if you watch the game back, Caelan Doris, exceptional example. He had for Deegan's try, he runs that Harry Byrne takes it straight. Caelan Doris comes in, sucks in a defender. Harry plays it out the back to Hugh Keenan, and they pick them off. Jack Conan to Max Deegan later in the second half. Jack Conan, he was running on a bit of an overs. Caelan Doris straight, huge line break. So it's just the understanding and the execution from those guys at the minute is just exceptional, of the triangles, Felipe's triangles.
So Phil Jackson had the triangle offence that he ran with the Bulls, and it's the first time I'd ever read about it. I'm sure other people were doing it too, but if memory serves, Phil Jackson was ripping it off from some Knicks coach in the 50s or 60s. But so is that where Felipe got it? Is there a connection? Or had anybody spoken to?
I'm
Is he the one
sure.
who spoke about the triangles?
Yeah,
first?
but like it's how a lot of every attack is run, but it was just how it was explained to me in layman's terms. It was the first time I got it. I was like, okay, that makes it very easy, because a lot of the time, and a lot of people were guessing half the time of like, there's a feel of like, oh, it was the right time to come in, it was the right time to stay out or whatever, but it made it a lot more simple for me to understand, and like there is another layer of like what's the defender doing, but even if you just understand that principle, it makes defending against it very hard, because
he's a good teacher, because he just taught us in like a minute and a half there, and we all understood it too, also in layman's terms, so that obviously worked out.
He's brilliant, and he's left a massive mark, and the great thing is, like, Andrew Goodman is a new version, so he's got new ways of doing it. I talked about the teams and the different things, so like everyone has their own way of doing things, and things that they're brilliant at. So anyway, that was his kind of layer and stamp he left on me. Anyway, he did hell of a lot for Leinster, but that little nugget he gave to me.
It looks like Goodman's staying around as well, after we were speculating after Rog had bounced that ball that time.
Can't believe that that wasn't true, but it was such the source really gave it away. But I know, listen, he was definitely a shoe-in to be involved, even maybe in the Crusaders, in the conversation. And then, of course, from what he'd done, from my experience with him, I'm not surprised if they were trying to get him over. It was probably the source that gave away for me.
Well, I'd say maybe it was, you think, wishful thinking on Roger's part to take him away from Leinster.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And listen, in fairness, maybe it came from a good place of he's a class coach.
I'd say it did. So you want to talk about Healy last week?
Yes, yeah. So I think we're talking about Keane in general, of like the role he's now taken in the Irish and Leinster team. It's unbelievable. I don't think the level of difficulty to be able to play loose head and tight head in the same game, it's at that level, it's just unheard of, right? And he's just, obviously he played hooker at one point in, for the scrums in that Scotland game, was it? But just his, just get on with it ability is incredible. But unfortunately for him, the weekend, and the rite of passage for any tight end out there is getting your wings and getting lifted off the ground. But didn't affect him in any way. But I think that's the first one I've seen in a game.
Explain that.
So again, getting your wings is as a tight head, it only happen as a tight head prop, where the pressure coming from the back behind you and the opposition, and your legs leave the ground, and all of a sudden you're in the air. But listen, it's happened to every single tight head prop, whether it be in training or be in a match, and it is 100% a right. You're on your way to being a good tight head prop, because after that you learn the ground is your friend, and it's definitely a rite of passage.
That must be a comparison to another sport, like the ability to play tight head and loose head like so seamlessly. The skill level involved there is ridiculous.
Yeah. I like Keane's a generational player, and I loved scrumming with him at loosehead, but I just his aggression and want for going forward at tight head, like, he genuinely was one of my favourite people to scrum with in general, and I get jealous when I see like the big scrum penalty the last day he was in with John, and just that feeling, because like I know when I'm packing down beside him, it's go time, especially with Porter as well.
This Munster team, obviously Fekitoa, Murray, Nash and Snyman are all out, and so it's going to be very difficult for them to overcome those injuries. Do they still have enough about them to win this game?
So they can definitely win the game, but I think they need a lot to go for them to win the game. I like, me being honest, I would say it'll be like a close first half, and I feel like we'll pull away in the second half and win comfortably. The only way I can see them getting into this game is getting rattling Leinster early. I think that's what they need to. So they're very good in the air. When I say the air, they're box kicking and chase and contesting in the air. So putting a lot of pressure on the guys in the backfield, getting momentum into the game, maybe getting a few scrum penalties here and there. a few turnover penalties. I know, like
I was going to say, when you say rattle them, like they'd need to be 21-0 up with a man advantage for Leinster to be rattled at this stage.
Not quite. I like rugby and sport is very fickle. When you're going well, you know, everyone is, you know, wants to know the secret sauce and what, like, how are you so unbeatable? But a chink in the armour, a mistake, all it takes is, you know, a mistimed tackle, you know, anything to either give a yellow card or a big swing of momentum, and all of a sudden things can change. Do I think Leinster will win? I do. I think they should win, you know, by a couple of scores. But how can Munster get into it? I think they need to rattle Leinster early and just get them out of their game, get them out of their flow, and like pressure game. They need Leinster to make mistakes.
We asked you to pick a 15 for this week with the following week in mind, which is obviously the same job that Leo Cullen and Lancaster and the rest of the crew have. How do they do that? How do they make sure that everybody arrives at the La Rochelle game primed and ready to go? Like, for us, outsider, like, oh, they need to get some game time or some minutes, but that's not really the case, is it? Like, when do you feel like most players need to have last played before they can play at their absolute peak?
So again, it's different for different players. For me, and I'm not at the elite level of like a lot of those lads, but when I was playing, I needed to be playing every week. But there's some guys, like, you could leave, like Johnny, you could leave him out for 6 months and I would be 100% confident he goes in there that he's going to run the ship well. If you look at Charlie Natai, off for like huge break, again, I'd be 100% confident. I think the more experienced you are, the less probably you need under your belt. The bit more when you're a bit more of a cart horse and you like playing every week, it suits you. You get in the flow of playing more. And when I say cart horse, I was more of a cart horse. So I like my picking of the team was, I think there'll be a lot of continuity from last week. I think they have an opportunity to do that, so I can't see why they won't. They'll throw in a sprinkle of guys to freshen it up, but I think why not? Like, the team played pretty well last week, bit of continuity, and kick on then for the next week.
You've picked Milne, Kelleher, Healy in the front row, Baird and Jenkins in the second row, and then it's Deegan, and then it's Penny/Connors. I guess that's depending on
injury, yeah.
Conan at 8. McGrath and Harry Byrne 9 and 10. Dave Carney and either Larmour or Jimmy O'Brien on the wings.
Depending on injury there. I saw Jordan was off injured, wasn't he?
And Natai and Frawley in the centre, with Hugo Keenan playing fullback. When you look at the injuries that Munster got, you know, this is a contact sport. You get lucky some weeks and you get no injuries and you get absolutely decimated with 5 players coming off injured. The Leinster squad is really big, and you'd say at this stage they're so well tuned that nobody is indispensable. But is there anybody who you just wouldn't risk this week just to make sure that they're at least on the starting lineup next week?
Well, I've gone a different perspective on it. I've gone the team that played last week. I've gone just for continuity in terms of, it's hard chopping and changing every week, and that's one of the challenges of, it's great having a big squad, but as a player it's hard being chopped and changed and having different partnerships and different things going on. So I think for the sake of continuity, and like that's probably what the thinking a little bit would be, is get this. It means also the lads who aren't playing, they have the continuity of training against this team the whole time. So you have 2 teams who are in whatever 3 or 4 sessions a week, having the same partnerships, having the same people training against each other. I think that's more important than kind of like, because you can't, moment you go into kind of like wrapping cotton wool, you pick up like the silliest knocks, or, you know, like that's actually when you get more chance of getting injured, when you're trying to not get injured.
I was watching Andy Kyriakou, the Munster forwards coach, speaking during the week, and he was talking about, he was asked consistently about the weight of history and this per record that the Munster players have playing Leinster, especially away from home. Is that something that just the media and people outside are worried about, or do you genuinely believe that the Munster players will be thinking about the history and the fact that they just can't seem to get over Leinster?
It's definitely in the back of your head. Like, I know with playing against teams that like when they consistently have beaten you over the years. You always just have. When I was in school, that team was like Blackrock. It was like before we got in the field, we'd beaten ourselves. But like I know I'm pals with Tyke Byrne, and I know like he wants nothing more than to beat Leinster, and he won't be worrying about what anyone else thinks about the games that have gone before. He's just going to want to be trying to get the team on his back and coming up with big moments, and like he's going to be pivotal for how they do. Like he has an exceptional game. I think that they're right in it, and they're going to depend on him.
What's Leamy like?
Leamy's a legend. I couldn't speak higher of him. I think he's like probably the biggest asset they've gotten in terms of like culture fit, as well as like class, detail, the contact side of things. No, he was absolutely brilliant in his time. A lot of like, it's funny, when someone comes from, you have again this perception of like, like I didn't say I hated him, but like definitely didn't like him over the years because he was just such a big character for Munster.
Very good.
Exactly. That also helps towards thing. But you get to know people and like, absolute legend of the game, 1 and 2, gentleman, and I'd say if you ask any of the Munster players, they'd rave about him.
Have you met Scannell since you retired? Is there peace breaking out now that you're civilian again?
Not quite yet, but I listen to anytime you're off the pitch, it's all good. But I think it's healthy to have that bit of competition.
Well, we're about to talk to Kieran Donaghy, and like famously, at the end of the All Ireland final, he goes, "What do you think about that, Joe Brawley?" Like the individual battle that you have with whoever it is that makes you not eat badly or do the extra bit of work that you like, oh my God, I just can't get the motivation to do this. But if you have a direct rival who you think might be doing it down the road, then sport is weird like that. You kind of need to be a bit psychotic.
Yeah, I think especially to play rugby, to be a bit tapped. No, it's a great part. It's part of the game that I certainly relished in. I loved the competition side of it and the rivalry side of it, and I definitely didn't shy away from how like expressing that side of it when I played, and it doesn't mean that I'll carry it on forever, but definitely
slowly it'll
slowly it withers away. But the competitor I don't think ever leaves you when you're in the field of play, but I think life moves on.
You've given us a prediction that as the second half wears on, that Leinster should be able to see them off. Is that fair enough? That's what you're sticking with.
I think the longer the game goes on, I think we'll wear them down. Munster of like, they were like a very good fence. So they would play with what I would call kind of like a 14 kind of 1 with the wingers on a pendulum, we'll say, right? So explain that. They like when you're attacking against them, it feels like you're attacking against 20 people and they're all just in front of you, and their wingers are very clever at reading kicks, so they come from the backfield into the front line very quickly as you're trying to attack, and all of a sudden there's like an extra man there. But how you punish those sorts of defences is those attacking kicks. So I feel like if Leinster can pin them back and punish that and try get them to get it wrong with their wingers closing early, I feel like we'll do well against them. But the great part of that defensive system gives you loads of poach opportunities because you have a lot of men around the ball, so that's the threat. So if Munster can get a few early poaches, Coombs will probably be playing, Bernie be playing, so like they have a lot of guys who will be going hard at the ball.
All right.
That's their chance to get
good stuff. James, enjoy the game. That's brilliant. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Bill.